Welcome to Codex, History of Video Games. I'm Mike Coletta.
And my name's Tyler Osby.
Oh, we got a great one today. I'm excited to talk about this GTA Chinatown Wars. And there's a reason we're doing this game. Like, it's a very specific reason we are, right? And you're going to get into
And
that.
I'll talk about that in a second because it's kind of weird, right? We haven't done a history of GTA on this show. I don't think. I went back through our notes because we've done so many. I always have to check. I don't think we've done a thing on GTA.
No, other than like mentioning it in passing in other books we've read, we have not touched GTA yet.
Yeah. So this is a series that we should probably talk about more. We're gonna start by talking about Chinatown Wars, which is kind of a weird one, but there is a reason for it. I do think there's a few books on the history of like Rockstar and Grand Theft Auto that are probably worth reading that we should maybe consider doing in that book club format. But for those who don't know, the Grand Theft Auto series is full of games, and they all kind of have the same general formula. Excuse me. There's an open world with a mission structure that's familiar to us, but it was pretty radical at the time, the way those first few games did it. And then, of course, Grand Theft Auto 3. You play as a protagonist who's usually a criminal or somehow gets themselves involved in the criminal underground. You drive around a huge city, causing mayhem, completing story missions that usually have you moving further and further into said criminal activities. The series is pretty well known for its satirical take on American culture, despite being mostly made in England, which I find kind of funny.
That is funny.
The first two games in the series were on the original PlayStation and PC, and I think the second one has a Dreamcast port also. And they have like a top-down perspective. And what was really innovative and cool about those games is the amount of freedom that they give to the players in the sandbox. I mean, we all know it today. We've all played GTA today. You know all about that. But that actually goes all the way back to the series' roots in 1997. Although I haven't spent very much time with the first two, and you were just talking about how maybe you can't get out of the car in those games, so maybe they don't.
Yeah, I thought you couldn't get out of the car, but I could be wrong because I've also not spent that much time with them. So maybe I'm wrong.
The first Driver game, you cannot get out of the car.
I could be confusing it with that because my brother was really into Driver, so maybe I'm confusing those. That is a very good possibility.
That's an interesting game series as well that I think would be fun to talk about.
For sure.
But the third game in the series, GTA 3, traded that top-down view for a third-person perspective, literally bringing a whole new dimension to the game. And then they also like went all in on kind of the shock factor, and it was another one of those rounds of like, oh no, the video games are ruining our children, things happening in the media. So that's kind of the world that we're in at this point in time, because Chinatown Wars came out in 2009. So we'll talk about all of that other stuff another time, but I just kind of wanted to set the table here. But one of the subreddits that I follow, the reason that we're talking about Chinatown Wars, one of the subreddits that I follow is the r/SBC Gaming subreddit, which it stands for single board computing gaming. It's mostly like about handhelds and like small miniature PCs and stuff that like people like to emulate games on. But on that subreddit, they pick a game every month to just sort of everybody plays it and they all discuss it. And this month, it's GTA Chinatown Wars. So I wanted to ride along with them on that and talk about this game. So I booted this game up, played it on my Retroid Pocket 5, and I started collecting some retro achievements. I'm playing the PSP version, although there's a few different versions. And when I do retro achievements now, I turn on hardcore mode, so you can't use save states. And it like counts more. I'm not exactly sure how it works on retro achievements.
It feels like it should count more. I think you're right. That's correct.
There is like when you unlock an achievement on your profile, it'll say whether it was done in normal or hardcore mode. So I've been feels like the hardcore mode ones are like worth a little bit more. I don't know if
I think so.
Not, but
yeah,
I think it's cool. But
I think it's respect points is what you get.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So Chinatown Wars is an interesting entry in the series because it came out in 2009, which is well past some of the other portable entries in the series. I'm thinking of like Liberty City Stories, Vice City Stories, which were both on the PSP and then later ported to the PS2. Those two games were really just kind of like standalone expansion packs for GTA 3 and Vice City. They had the same map as Liberty City Stories has the same map as GTA 3. Vice City Stories has the same map as Vice City. And I think they're both prequels. I can't remember, but they're more or less like just standard GTA, but on a PSP. It was very cool at the time. But Chinatown Wars, despite myself having played it on the PSP, was actually designed with the DS in mind. So it's kind of uniquely suited for that platform, and it's really the only GTA game available on the DS, and I guess it was probably the only GTA available on a Nintendo console until the remakes of 3, Vice City, and San Andreas hit Switch.
Probably.
Right?
I mean, interesting for Nintendo to choose to do Grand Theft Auto based on their track record of like family-friendly gaming. You know,
Yeah. I think maybe they were at this point they were kind of trying to get away from that a little bit.
like, we got to be hip. We got to be
right.
hip with the people.
Yeah, they knew they were falling behind without having the GTAs on their consoles. So let's get into the grime facts for GTA Chinatown Wars. It was developed by Rockstar Leeds with support from Rockstar North. That's Rockstar Leeds is specifically a studio that at the time was mostly just making portable things. We'll talk about them in a second. It was published by Rockstar Games. It sold just under 1 million copies, which is like not great for a GTA game. I think it's the 3rd worst selling GTA game overall. Its genre is the GTA genre, which is kind of its own genre. It's like action adventure, open world, lots of driving. The physics in this game are much more arcade physics as opposed to like Grand Theft Auto 4, which felt a lot more realistic. Do you remember when that came out? And it was like the driving was like kind of weirdly realistic. That was in like not a super fun way. It was released on the Nintendo DS March 17th, 2009, which is actually very close to when we're recording this. It was released on the PSP in October of that same year, and then it hit iOS in January the next year, and then 4 years after that, or almost 5 years after that, it hit Android and Fire OS, which, fun fact, Fire OS and Android are the same thing. But Fire OS is like specifically the Kindle version of Android, so it must have been in their app store. The average time to finish this game is 9 to 12 hours for the main story, 20 plus hours if you're going completionist on it. I think that's pretty short as far as GTA campaigns go. It's probably feels like about half of what a GTA game normally is, which I don't mind on a portable platform. I think that's totally okay. As far as best system to play this on, I think you could make an argument for the DS being the best system because of the touchscreen mechanics that were made specifically for it. But I think the PSP version has better graphics, and the iOS version has support for some custom soundtracks, which is kind of neat. And I think cool. It maybe has a couple extra radio stations too. But I recommend the PSP version because that's what I'm playing, and you can get retro achievements on it. All right, so let's get into it with Chinatown.
I'm ready. Here. I'm ready.
I think Chinatown Wars is rather unique in GTA, especially at the time, because it returned to this sort of top-down perspective that GTA was known for prior to GTA 3 in 2001. It's also only the second game in the modern series to feature an immigrant as the main protagonist, because you had like GTA 4 had Nico Bellic. Remember, he came over from Eastern Europe, came to Liberty City to meet up with his cousin Roman and discover the American dream for himself, which I think he discovers is it didn't quite work out very well for him.
But Roman just wants to go bowling all the time.
I know, he just wants to go bowling. That game, GTA 4, was itself a pretty big shift for the series because they completely redesigned Liberty City, and then this is where Rockstar really started getting focused on telling more character-driven stories. Nico Bellic is a character we all know, whether you love him or not. Whether you think he's a good person or not is certainly up for debate. But I think GTA 4 was kind of the first game of Rockstar's storytelling era that I'm calling this, because after that we got Red Dead, we got LA Noire, and then we got GTA 5, which had 3 protagonists. So this is where they really started dipping their toes into telling good stories, I think. You could say the Max Payne games were also doing that, especially the third one, although that third one came out a little bit later than these 2 games.
Third one's also kind of like a big genre shift.
Yeah.
I guess not genre shift, tonal shift. For Max
it
Payne.
wasn't made
It's
by
hard
Remedy,
to be
right?
Yeah, and it's hard because they're trying to be like grimy Max Payne, but also in the world of like tropical. It was a weird game. I played it and I was like, this is fun, but it's a weird vibe. You know what I mean? Because it's like an older Max Payne. So it's interesting.
Yeah, you get like it's like an old man Logan version of.
It is. It's the old man Logan version of Max Payne.
Yeah, so this is the world that like Chinatown Wars is being released into in 2009. I had to ask myself this question, like, why does this game exist at all? Because it seems so like weirdly out of place, right?
You're just playing it like, why do you exist?
It
What are
was,
you
yeah, it
doing
was a few
here?
years into the DS's reign. It was pretty clear that, that Nintendo had a huge hit on their hands with the DS, which sold over 154 million units in its lifetime, which is still the highest selling device Nintendo has ever sold. Although the Switch is closing in pretty quickly, I think. The DS would go on to sell roughly double what its closest competition was with the PSP. So of course, I think it makes sense that Rockstar would want to get in on some DS action here. That's kind of an untapped market for them, I think, especially with Nintendo players, because they hadn't really had a GTA in the Nintendo console universe ever. So this was like their first time bringing a GTA game to a Nintendo console. But it was pretty clear that the DS was the weaker hardware compared to the PSP at the time, despite selling like hotcakes and gangbusters. So they knew that they were going to need some experienced developers to take that full GTA experience and kind of shrink it down to the handheld size, which they didn't. They did it, technically they did it with the PSP, because Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories are technically portable games, but they feel like full GTA games. Like they don't feel like there were any compromises made. But with the DS, they knew they were going to have to make some compromises because the power's just not there, right? So they tapped their very experienced group of devs available for this, which was Rockstar Leeds. Now, Rockstar Leeds has kind of an interesting story because they started life as a company called Mobius Entertainment. They mostly focused on creating games for Game Boys. They were making like lots of portable games, doing a lot of licensed games. They had done the GBA adaptation of Max Payne, which is a pretty impressive looking, like weird isometric third-person shooter that I think would have been cool if the GBA had like 2 joysticks. It could have been a like Max Payne but Geometry Wars kind of deal. Mm-hmm. That's how it looked when I was just like sort of poking around and seeing what other stuff that they had done. This version of Max Payne had impressed Rockstar so much they just straight up bought the studio. And they called it Rockstar Leeds. And they were like, you guys you're us now. And so the Rockstar Leeds became Rockstar's go-to for making portable games. So they made, like I said, Vice City Stories, Liberty City Stories. They had done Midnight Club 3 as well for the PSP, and the PSP port of The Warriors.
Like the movie The Warriors, the 80s movie?
Yeah, so there was this weird time in Rockstar history where they decided they wanted to make a game based on this movie that was, I think it was a late 70s movie. I've seen it.
Yeah, it's I thought it was 80s, but I guess you're right. It might be late 70s.
I think
like it's
late
older.
70s. It's a weird movie. It's like kind of weird. It's good, but it's so strange.
Yeah, it's really weird. It's like these gangs in New York, but they all have these themes, right? Yeah. And the Warriors get like framed for murder, and then all the gangs try to fight them on their way trying to get back to safety, you know? And it's like there's like a baseball gang and they're all wearing baseball gears. It's weird. It's a weird movie.
That was a weird time to be Rockstar, but so they decided to make a game. They were making the Warriors the game, and then they're making so they had a PSP version of that. Rockstar Leeds did that, so that's I guess that's where that goes. But when they're making this for the DS, so they knew that this was going to be a little bit different because of its unique like dual screen features, as well as the technical inferiority to the PSP. The team was going to have to make some compromises to get the full GTA experience on the DS. So let's come back to the game itself. It's done from a top-down camera angle like the GTAs prior to GTA 3. It also kind of has its own art style, which is kind of the opposite of the realism-focused GTA 4. And then there was like the art style they'd used in 3, Vice City, and San Andreas was kind of this like exaggerated realism where it was like kind of cartoony, but like still a little bit realism. But Chinatown Wars just goes all in on cel-shaded. Like this is a cartoon game, right? They did cutscenes in this sort of like motion comic book style. I wouldn't say like, because there are games that do this like comic book thing for cutscenes. I wouldn't say that it goes as far as something like Infamous does. It's not like trying to mimic that aesthetic, but it does use sort of like static images with text overlaid. And it kind of reminds me of a comic book. There's no voice acting, probably because of the cartridge size on the DS. I think if this had been a PSP first game, they might have gone for some voice acting, because UMDs could hold a lot more data than a DS cartridge. So the story features Huang Li, who is a member of the Triad, which is like a Chinese gang. I think it's real. I don't know anything about gangs.
Is it Triad or Triad?
Triad? Maybe Triad?
I'm not sure.
You might be right. But he's coming to Liberty City because he's got to deliver a family heirloom to his uncle. That heirloom is a sword called Yu Jian. And Huang is supposed to deliver this sword to his uncle after his father's mysterious murder. His uncle is named Kenny. He wants to give this sword to Triad leadership to try to secure his position as like next in line to become Triad boss. And so when Huang shows up, and he doesn't have the sword because he's been ambushed shortly after arriving. This is all opening cutscene stuff. Shortly after arriving in Liberty City, he gets ambushed. They steal the sword. He's left for dead. And so his uncle is like, you got to get this sword back because I need it to become leader of the Triads. So he's also investigating his father's murder. He's helping his uncle sort of consolidate power with the Triad. And the story is like full of twists and turns, and I think it's worth playing. It's an interesting, different angle on how things work in Liberty City and who has the power and that kind of stuff. Because you don't spend any time at all with these characters in GTA 4. I think technically in maybe an expansion for GTA 4, like Huang is in the police system. If you're like, so there's like kind of Easter eggs that reference.
Oh, you can like find him in the like computer or something.
Yeah, but otherwise there are no references here. So the map is the same map from GTA 4, actually, that reimagined Liberty City. It's a pretty faithful portable recreation that's just missing the Alderney part of Liberty City from GTA 4. So it's like that like rightmost island. There's no story stuff that happens there. So they were like, we just leave it out. We don't need this. It's like pretty much intact. There's some stuff that's been like kind of slightly redesigned because of the camera angle, just make it easier to see stuff. But like otherwise, if you know your way around Liberty City from GTA 4, you know your way around Liberty City in Chinatown Wars.
That's really cool. They did that.
Yeah. So aside from all the usual GTA shenanigans that you get up to in this game, there are a few things that are unique that make this game kind of stand on its own compared to the rest of the series. The first thing is, because it's a DS game, it's got these touchscreen interactions, right? So occasionally when you're stealing cars, especially parked cars, you will have to play like a little mini game to hotwire the car. These are all done with the touchscreen on the DS, where you have to like undo screws and like put wires together and like turn a key and that kind of stuff. And it adds like a little bit of extra tension if you're like trying to steal a car while you're on the run from the cops. On the PSP, these mini games are still there. They're just they're kind of turned into quick time events rather than like touchscreen things. They're not materially that different. Like they still have that level of tension there. It's not quite as cool as on the DS, but it works well enough. The iOS and Android ports do kind of bring back some of the touchscreen elements. So those maybe you might consider those games the definitive version of this. The second thing that this game has is it's got like kind of a drug dealing mini game. Did you ever play Drug Wars or Dope Wars on your calculator in high school or anything like that?
No, I don't think I did. I know of the game, but I never played it myself.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, where you will buy drugs in one area and then drive to another area to sell them to make money. And there's like a whole tips system in the game where it like kind of gives you you get tipped off as to where the deals are and that kind of stuff. It's a simple game, but it's not always easy because the prices sort of fluctuate, and so you want to be in the right place at the right time. And you got to be careful when you have the drugs on you, because if you get busted by the cops, you're gonna lose all your product, right? So you gotta be careful. And there's 100 security cameras all around the city. And if you take out the security cameras, they're usually near where the deals go down. If you take out those security cameras, then you're less likely to get busted by the cops, although it's not impossible. But yeah, this game just reminds me of Drug Wars or Dope Wars, sometimes called. I played it on my TI-83 calculator in high school. It's the kind of game that just exists on all platforms in some form or another, because it's a pretty simple idea. People make these like as their first game if they're like trying to learn how to program and stuff. They'll make a Dope Wars style game. So,
dude, we need to talk about TI-83 calculators and the games that were made on that, because they were really fun. They were really silly and fun, and I liked it.
Yeah, me too. The last thing that this game has that I think is actually really, really cool is they tweaked police chases in a way that I would like to see in future GTA games. So basically, when you're wanted by the cops in a GTA game, you could get up to 6 stars of wanted level, and that basically the higher your wanted level, the more the cops are going to come after you. But in this game, instead of just trying to outrun the cops or like hide from them, you can take a more active role in like crashing into the police cars or causing them to crash. Like if you can sort of run them into a building or something, you, depending on what your wanted level is, you will have like a certain number of cop cars you need to like incapacitate, which is like makes it kind of fun to not run away from them, but to try to like lead them around so that they're like running into walls and stuff. I think it makes police chases feel a little bit more like you're in control rather than like just trying to get away, but like you can.
Yeah. It's like they changed it to Blues Brothers rules.
Yeah,
That's what they did.
yeah, exactly. And you have to yell that you're on a mission from God when you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, Blues Brothers rules. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much the game. I mean it's GTA 2D in 2D form. It's technically a 3D game, and there are mods for the PSP version that will like make it a third-person game, and they're super janky and weird, and I don't like. They're a little unsettling, but
because yeah, they're kind of like blocky figurines when they're running around, like watching. Because I was gone all week. I was on like a tour thing for comedy, so I didn't get a chance to play the game, but I watched video of the game, and they look almost like Lego figures, kind of from the top. Like they look a little blocky.
Yeah,
is what I was kind of seeing.
They're pretty cartoony. I think they're sprite based.
So that's got to look weird in third person. If you try to like zoom into that, it's going to look maybe unsettling. Yeah.
Yeah. Plus the draw distance is obviously set to be what you can see in your camera from a top down view. So when you put the camera in a different angle, like it's just mostly fog because you can't see that far ahead of you.
It's like you play the game top down, fun game. You play the game third person, haunted Roblox. Don't play it.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's terrifying. It's haunted Roblox. Don't play
it. Yeah. But the game was pretty well received by critics. Eurogamer in particular gave it a 10 out of 10. They said, overall, this is GTA as it first was, with the inherited wisdom of GTA as it's been since, finished off with all sorts of things that would happily belong in a GTA of the future. So it's like acknowledging the past, being a great game now, and putting in features that should be in future GTAs that unfortunately didn't really make it. So
that's quite the praise.
Yeah, I'm retroactively sad that these things didn't, like the hot wiring minigame didn't make it into future games. The police chases stuff didn't really make the cut. The drug stuff, that game, there was an expansion released for GTA Online a couple of years ago that like kind of integrates something like that in there. So that eventually came to the GTA series like 15 years later. So yeah, those other things though, as far as I know, didn't make it. But if I'm mistaken, please send me an email. Tell me how I don't know anything about GTA, because I would love to hear that.
Codex History Podcast at gmail.com.
That's right. But despite its critical success, it did not sell like hotcakes in gangbusters. It sold like cold cakes and whatever. I don't know what the opposite of a gangbuster is.
Lonely busters, because instead of a gang, you're alone.
Yeah. Lonely.
Sure,
busters.
Nailed it. First try. We don't need to workshop that. That's nope. All good.
Yep, first try.
Never didn't have it.
I got a few reasons here why I think it didn't quite do as well as maybe it should have. The first one here is I think this was a time period of kind of the end of handheld gaming's dominance. We're in 2009, so the iPhone's been out for a couple of years already. Android phones are starting to pick up steam as well. It's starting to become kind of clear that like if you're going to bring a portable device with you, you're going to probably bring your phone. And so people were, I think, less about carting around their DS at this point in time. It was kind of a transitionary period, so that's why I don't think it took very long for Chinatown Wars to have Android and iOS ports, because I think they kind of saw which way the wind was blowing on that one. It did get a PSP port, which is how I played it for this episode, but the PSP port came a few years after the release of Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, both of which kind of better deliver that like core GTA gameplay that is so recognizable to players. The iOS and Android ports did come out before the GTA ports came to iOS and Android. So for a little while, this was like kind of the only way to play GTA on your phone. So that kind of made sense. But the touch only controls at the time were kind of hard to play with. It does have controller support now, but I think when it first came out on phones, it didn't have any controller support. So it was like, this is how you play GTA on your phone. And it's like kind of bad touchscreen controls for like just, suboptimal. And then of course, the audience of the DS, which was kids. It just naturally skews younger, and they're not interested in what GTA offers. And if they are interested, if their parents are like mine, they're not going to let them buy it anyway. So I think they sort of misjudged the audience here, maybe. Chinatown Wars was a little bit lighter on some of the criminal elements, but it was still rated M. It definitely still had you shooting people. It definitely still had you dealing drugs. And I think the people that would have wanted to play this game, they wanted to play it on their PSPs, where they had access to Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, which I don't want to say those are better games than Chinatown Wars, but I think if you're trying to play GTA on the go, those games just look like they are GTA more than Chinatown Wars does, ironically, because that style is Chinatown Wars is actually like the original GTA games. So, yeah, I think it was just like, why would you play this when you could be playing Vice City Stories or Liberty City Stories? So those are kind of my reasoning for why this didn't do so well as a game. As far as game's legacy goes, well, despite being really good, I don't think it had much of an influence on later games. At first glance, if you're just like browsing, it looks like an older GTA game with nothing new or innovative to offer. The features that make it unique didn't really carry forward in the series, so there isn't a nostalgia factor or like let's go back and see how this feature originated in this game. It's like those features just didn't happen later on, so there wasn't really any of that. I think really the only thing is like that drug dealing mini game that eventually made its way to GTA Online. But it's hard to say that was added because it had been in Chinatown Wars, or maybe if it's just because thematically that makes sense for a GTA game. So there are some references in the GTA Online version of the Drug Wars game that make it seem like they at least went back and sort of referenced Chinatown Wars. So maybe I'm a little bit wrong about that, but I think this is one of those games that was like, it was really good, but it didn't really have a place in the world that it came out in, right? And I'd say it still doesn't like have a place. It's fun to come back to and visit it when you're not like projecting what your expectations of what a GTA game should be like onto it. I don't know what to call this kind of game, this game that's like actually just kind of good, but you didn't really have a reason to play it. And it like kind of maybe didn't live up to expectations, like certain potentially unfair expectations when it first came out. But if you go back to it years later and you're just like, I just want to play the game for what it is, I don't really care about expectations, what you find is a fun game. But it's like, but why play this over anything else, at the time? So like, I don't know what, like, there should be a name for that kind of game where you come back to it and you're like, this is cool, but why?
Why was it made?
I was like, why does this game exist?
Yeah. We should bring, if you think of a term, send us an email or let us know on Discord. What should you call that kind of game? That's what we want to know.
Yeah.
And we'll think about it too. Maybe we can come back next week with some stuff.
Yeah, and I'd love to do like more episodes on games like that, where you're just like, if you just go back to it, play it for what it was, man, it was pretty good, but it didn't do well because of expectations. I'm struggling to think of like a good example right now of games that are like that, but I know I've done that where I've come back to, like, Final Fantasy 13 is kind of like that. I think if you when it came out, it didn't quite live up to these like expectations that fans had of Final Fantasy games and what a Final Fantasy game is. But if you come back to it years later and you just play it for what it is and you don't play it because you want your Final Fantasy fix, it's like, it's a pretty cool game that does some cool stuff that is, flawed in some ways, but ultimately like still is a good game if you don't put those expectations onto it. I don't know. Not that Chinatown Wars isn't considered a good game, but I think it flew under everybody's radar back then and stays under their radar today. And it's hard for me to say like, oh, this is an underrated like masterpiece gem. It's just like
hidden gem.
I just wish people would give it more of a chance,
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think of other games that would be like that. It's not necessarily ahead of its time either.
Yeah.
It's just like the time it came out, it's not what people were looking for.
Yeah. And if you were looking for portable GTA, you got that better from Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories, I think.
You know what? I think you're better if you want to look for games like this. The way to do that would be to look at other consoles near the end of their lifespan and the games that came out then. That might tell you what this is. Like my thought, and I don't think that this is a game like that, but an example of that would be like Star Tropics 2, which is called like I forget the name of it. It's like the Revenge of something.
They made a Star Tropics 2?
Yeah, they made Star Tropics 2. It was called The Revenge of Zoda, I think. I forget what the bad guy's name is in that. But that came out when the Super Nintendo had already come out, but it was on the NES. So in a way, it's like a game that was modern that people wanted, but it already moved on. And so I feel like Chinatown Wars is kind of like, it came out on the DS and it's a good portable game for the dual screen system, but we've already moved on to cell phones.
Yeah.
And like iOS and Android.
Yeah.
So
And the people who were left on DS were mostly kids who were either not interested or were not allowed to play GTA game.
yeah, but that is an interesting type of game, and I think I want to know. We got to think of a good name for it. You know, that's a good.
Yeah, there's got to be a good name for that kind of game.
Yeah, for sure. It's good. It's good.
So yeah.
But
Anyway,
yeah,
it was fun to check out, fun to play. I like when subreddits will have like, oh, let's have this game of the month and like sort of play it for funsies, and we'll all talk about it. And so I gave it a shot, and I had more fun with it than I thought I would. So
nice. Well, that's
yeah.
great. And you are a fan of the Pocket PC, the single board PC that you're talking about,
Yes,
right?
the
Like
the
you
single
got.
board computing. They talk about a lot of different
Mhm.
things. I have my I'll show you my Retroid Pocket 5, which kind of just looks like a PS Vita, but this is the GameCube version. I think I've shared this
Nice.
before, but
You
yeah.
digging it? You liking it?
Oh yeah, dude, plays everything. You can
I
play some
love that.
Switch games on there. I also have this
What?
cool case for it that I got off Etsy. It's like
Ooh.
printed but very sturdy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah,
It's good stuff.
what you been playing, Mike?
Well, as I said, I was on the road this week, so I haven't really played a lot of games. But before I left, I was working on Avowed still,
Okay.
playing through that. I'm kind of gotten more into it now, so I'm like into the story. I'm enjoying it. I do agree with other people's sentiments. Like, it's not a deep RPG, but if you just want to feel really cool while you're shooting off magic spells, I think Avowed's what you're looking for, and I really dug it. So that's really all I played this week. I did a little Red Dead Online earlier this week too, because that's just fun to play with friends. But other than that, it's kind of a slow week for me. Because I also, dude, I brought my Steam Deck with me, thinking I could play on the road, but I was in a place with bad Wi-Fi, and I forgot to update my Steam Cloud, so I couldn't get the newest saves of
saves
Stardew
weren't there.
Valley. Because I was like, well, maybe I can get some Stardew Valley work done on the road, right? Like in the nighttime hours when I'm trying to go to bed. And I didn't have Wi-Fi at the place I was at. It's a huge bummer.
Man. Couldn't tether to your phone just to grab those saves.
I tried. I didn't have phone service either. I was in Natchez, Washington. If anyone wants to look up where I was deep, actually technically Cliffdale, Washington. So I was really close to a mountain pass that was closed. So I was far out there.
Famous for no reception.
No phone. When your phone goes to that little satellite symbol, you're like, uh-oh, that's not good.
Yeah, we're in
and it's like, do you want to send your location with the satellite? You can do that. And it's like, okay, well, that makes it sound like I'm lost in the wilderness right now, iPhone.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that to me?
That satellite function to like send a text message? It's so interesting because it like takes a couple minutes for it to like you have to point it at the sky correctly. You have to like be very still, and it takes a couple minutes to like capture the satellites, and then it's like, okay, you can send a text now. Like you send your text message, and then it like takes forever. And
I should do that. I should have sent you a text.
It tells the other person too. It says, hey, this was sent with satellites.
Ooh, that's really cool. I should have done it. If I'd have known, I would have sent you a text and been like, satellite text for Tyler.
Yeah. The only time I've used it was actually I was at a concert venue, and I don't know, the cell service was just bad where I was in the middle of Los Angeles, but I could get some satellites.
Sending that satellite text. That's cool.
Yep.
Well, what have you been playing this week other than Chinatown Wars?
Mostly Chinatown Wars, but I have been putting a couple hours into Ghost of Sparta, God of War, Ghost of Sparta.
Ooh,
Still on the God of War train. So that's the PSP one. And it's good. It's more God of War. It takes place between the first and second games, I think.
Nice.
So it's kind of an interquel, I think is the technical term there. An interquel.
Oh, nice. Well, my goal this week is to get the Minecraft notes done for the first episode. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be. It could be 1. It could be 2. I don't even know. I've been kind of, I've had a very busy week, and personal things that I don't want to share have gotten in the way. Everything's fine, but it's been stressful. So I haven't had the time I've needed to do stuff I've wanted to do. But I'm hoping now that I can get back on it, I can get the Minecraft episode done so we can get that started out here. So that's the plan for next week. If you have any suggestions for us or just want to shoot us an email, you can do that at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can go to codexpodcast.net. That has all of our links on there, our Discord, a contact form, our Trello boards. So you can see everything there if you want to. And also, if you join the Discord, don't forget, you got to check the little box to follow the rules. That's how you see everything.
You
So if
got
you're like,
promise
I
not to be a
joined, I
jerk.
can't see anything. Yeah, you got to promise not to be a jerk. But with that, Tyler, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah. I gotta get my buttons ready here. Goodbye,
Oh
everybody.
yeah.